The rise of the Empire saw the galaxy's most prominent military take on a new face. The Tarkin Doctrine pushed new Imperial-class Star Destroyers to the front lines, as the less aggressive, carrier-focused Venators seemingly just disappeared. But where did the Venators actually go? And, more broadly, what happened to all of the Republic's Clone War era vessels? That's what we'll discuss today. So, to my knowledge, we've never been given any concrete numbers regarding the actual size of the Republic's military, though maybe that would be a task for a later video. Regardless, they were fighting a galaxy-spanning conflict, and it's been said that thousands of ships were active during the Battle of Coruscant. It's not like the entire military was just shoved into a broom closet the moment Palpatine activated Order 66 and declared the formation of the new Empire, or at least I don't think so. The actual answer is, well, complicated, and it varies depending on ship class. Nonetheless, I do want to make something very clear. The Empire heavily militarized, and before long, the vast majority of major Imperial fleets were made up of Imperial Star Destroyers, at least as their backbone, while both new and older ships acted in support roles, at least theoretically that is. Practically, because of the advanced nature of the ISD, many Star Destroyers acted independently. So this new frontline capital ship meant that production shifted heavily from Republic-era vessels to the new Imperial tools of war. Naturally, ships were destroyed and thus not replaced. An example of this is the Vindicator, which largely replaced the Dreadnought as an entry-level cruiser, which meant that the Dreadnought slowly fell out of prominence. On the other hand, the Republic-era Carrack was supplemented by the new Lancer as mainline frigates, yet continued to see active service and production. The Empire, of course, added in a bunch of new classes. Battlecruisers and dreadnoughts especially became much more popular, but that's outside the scope of today's video. Let's, however, get into specifics, and we'll start with the most visible ship of the Republic Navy, the Venator-class Star Destroyer. A lot of people don't realize this, but by the end of the Clone Wars, Venators were already being phased out somewhat, mostly by the newer Victory line, which was smaller but more well-armed. By the Battle of Coruscant, the Imperator also entered service, and as the Revenge of the Sith Incredible Cross-section states, midway through the Clone Wars, Venator construction was already slowing in favor of other vessels, and it's clear that by the end of the war, the Venator population was nowhere near its height. However, the ship continued to lead fleets and execute important missions in the months and perhaps years after 19 BBY. However, as the Empire's new style became more closely aligned with the Tarkin Doctrine, which was presented in 18 BBY, the Venator became far less prominent publicly, not only because the new Empire favored firepower over carrying, but also because the Imperial military sought to distance itself from the Republic in the minds of the Empire's citizens. But simply saying they were pushed out isn't very descriptive. As I said, the main question is, where did they go? Now, from an out-of-universe perspective, the absence of the Venator can obviously be explained by the fact most of the Galactic Civil War and post-Galactic Civil War content was created before the prequels, or at least before Episode 3, which introduced the Venator. However, the Essential Guide to Warfare, along with other sources, also gives a pretty convincing reason why. Jason Fry, in his endnotes for the book, summarizes by saying the Venators were largely shipped off to unimportant backwater areas of the galaxy, or fell into private or quasi-private hands. Here's one quote: "The Moff's militias are where a lot of decommissioned Republic assault cruisers ended up after Revenge of the Sith." He later continues, more broadly, after a period of experimentation, the Empire settles upon the ISD as the backbone of its power, but most local enforcement is handled by smaller ships, many of them legacy forces from the Clone Wars. The Essential Guide to Warfare itself has more information on this point. After the formation of the Empire, sector groups were created across the galaxy, and responsible for two duties: escort and superiority roles. Superiority fleets, which were the main muscle of the Empire, were made up mostly of Imperial Star Destroyers, and were the primary source of Imperial power. Older ships like the Venator, after the ISD was fully introduced, were moved to escort forces, fleets mostly responsible for fighting pirates and raiders. Initially, as the population of Venators was still high, the ships would have seen pretty significant use here. However, a Venator is really not well suited for these type of duties. It's way too slow, far larger than necessary to fight off pirate forces or smugglers, and simply requires way too many people to operate. Smaller, more efficient ships for the role, like the new Nebulon B, would have fit much better and would have been heavily preferred. So a Venator doesn't fit well in a backup duty. However, it also wouldn't fit into superiority roles because it doesn't abide by the Tarkin Doctrine. No one would have wanted to take crews away from the other more advanced ships like the Imperial Star Destroyer, and just generally it wasn't seen as a good fit. And this is why Venators often made their way into private hands as training ships for Imperial pilots or within individual planetary defense fleets. With no new Venators being created, it was thus only a matter of time until their presence in the galaxy was seriously diminished, especially when already relegated to backwater worlds. When looking at other ships, their diminished presence can be largely explained by the sheer expansion and new doctrine of the Imperial military. The Imperial Star Destroyer became the basis for a lot of the Empire's new ship designs, again as a way to present a sort of cohesive front. So while Clone Wars era ships like the Victory still remained prominent, the Vindicator, Interdictor, and others replaced other Clone Wars vessels. The second most prominent ship of the Republic Navy, the Acclamator, was moved completely off the front line and more properly to a transport role. However, many smaller ships, primarily those fitting in the frigate or corvette category, not only continued to see prominence, but some also remained under production. I include here the Carrack, several of the Corellian gunship or corvette models, and of course ships like the Pelta. Others like the Dreadnought, which were incredibly prominent, continued to see action but weren't produced further. Interestingly, all of these vessels were not unique to the Republic Navy, and some like the Dreadnought were extraordinarily common in the days before the Clone Wars. So I hope that answers the question. Really, it depends on the ship. If there's anything else you'd like to know about this topic, make sure to leave it down below with the hashtag AskEck. Before we leave, however, I would like to handle the question of the day. Today's question comes from Isaac, who asks about the in-universe use of BBY and ABY. So, in datekeeping, there's what's known as an epoch, which is used as sort of a reference point when telling time. BBY and ABY exist mostly out of universe for the convenience of the readers. Thousands of different epochs exist in the Star Wars universe, and I've done a whole video on them, which I'll link above. Great question though, make sure you guys leave yours down below. But until next time, thank you guys so much for watching, and this has been EckhartsLadder. Please like this video if you enjoyed, subscribe for more, and turn those notifications on. May the Force be with you.